Day 3, January 3rd. Selfish love, Genesis 25:28. And Isaac loved Esau, because he did eat of his venison, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Genesis 25:28. A great length of time has passed since Isaac and Rebekah's wedding. They have 2 grown sons now, Jacob and Esau, whom they love very much, and it is their love for their sons which will have our attention today. Through our verse we are given a view into the hearts of Isaac and Rebekah toward their sons. As our verse discloses to us, Isaac loved Esau because of the game which he hunted, for Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field. Genesis 25:27. But Rebekah loved Jacob. We are told that unlike Esau, Jacob was a plain man, dwelling in tents. Genesis 25:27. Now certainly Isaac and Rebekah loved both of their sons, but by these words we are shown that they each had a preference. The Bible makes it clear that Esau was a very vain man, caring little for things which mattered most. For example, Esau sold his birthright to Jacob for just a bowl of stew. Genesis 25:29-34. Esau was so foolish in this decision that God uses him as an illustration of those who sell their souls for the empty things of this world. The writer of Hebrews, in urging us to follow after peace and holiness, warns us against becoming a fornicator or profane person, as Esau, who for one morsel of meat sold his birthright. Hebrews 12:16. Thus, Esau was a profane person, a fool in the eyes of God. We get another glimpse of Esau's carelessness and vanity when we read the account where he chose his wives. For, in an act of intentional disrespect to the will of his parents, he married 2 Hittite women. Genesis 26:34-35. Unlike Esau, Jacob showed great desire for things of true value. Esau was willing to sell his birthright for a bowl of stew, but Jacob was willing to go to great lengths to obtain it. When Isaac was near to death, Jacob dressed up as Esau so that by deceiving his father, he might obtain Esau's blessing. While this act of deceit was evil, it was nevertheless a demonstration of Jacob's wisdom. With these things in mind, we must wonder why Isaac had greater love for Esau than Jacob. Why would he have a greater affection for one who was profane and who troubled his family by marrying evil women? Our text gives us the surprising answer, for it is written that Isaac loved Esau because he did eat of his venison. Genesis 25:28. Indeed, it is quite shocking to see that Isaac, a godly man, showed preference to Esau because of food. How could this be? While it was a blessing to eat the savory food which Esau provided, we would not expect this to be a basis for partiality in his affections. Rather, we would expect that, if there was any partiality, it would be based upon the more important matters of character and virtue. But sadly, this was not the case. While God despised Esau for his foolishness and godlessness, calling him a profane man, Isaac loved him for the sake of his stomach. This is an example of the weakness of human love. Unlike the perfect love of God, our love is often based on what we can gain from a person. In the account of Isaac, we have the benefit of seeing the situation as seen by God, who saw the true state of both Isaac and Rebekah's hearts toward their sons. For if we had asked Isaac, he may have said that he loved both of his sons equally, but nothing can be hidden from the eyes of God. Let's take this truth and use it as a mirror. Could it be that we have similar affections in our lives? Partiality in our love based on the gratification of our own desires. Do we love someone because of the things which they provide us with? Do we love someone because, through a relationship with them, we may further our own interests? Has our love been polluted for want of a payoff? This kind of love, if we can call it love, is what characterizes the love of unbelievers. For if ye love them which love you, what thank have ye? For sinners also love those that love them. And if ye do good to them which do good to you, what thank have ye? For sinners also do even the same. And if ye lend to them of whom ye hope to receive, what thank have ye? For sinners also lend to sinners, to receive as much again. Luke 6:32-34. It is evident that our love for others is nothing special if we only do it for our own selfish interests. If I love some people more than others because of what they give me, my love is nothing more than selfishness. But this brings up an important question. Is it ever right to love some people more than others? We might be inclined to think that we should love all people with an equal degree of love. But this is not what the Bible teaches. When we search the Bible, we can see that we must love different people with different degrees of love. Let's take a look at the scriptures which prove this. First of all, we have to show that there are in fact degrees of love. For in order to speak of how our love must be in various degrees, we must first believe that degrees do exist and are taught in Scripture. We also need to show this because, in the minds of many Christians, it might seem wrong to think of love being in degrees, for we might suppose that love is simply love, and that it is always love in the fullest degree wherever it appears. But let's ask ourselves a question. Is it loving to give someone a cup of water? Certainly, so long as our giving is unto the Lord, for any act of service performed for men as unto the Lord is an act of love. Now a second question. Was Christ's death on the cross no greater in love than giving someone a drink? Certainly it was much greater. Though both acts flow from the same principle of divine love, the greater sacrifice is said to be an act of greater love. As the Scripture says, "Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends." John 15:13. It is one thing to love our neighbor as ourselves, but to love our neighbor more than ourselves speaks of a higher degree of loving. We have a beautiful statement of the Apostle Paul which also implies degrees of love, for he says, "I will very gladly spend and be spent for you, though the more abundantly I love you, the less I be loved." 2 Corinthians 12:15. A second example can be seen in the account of the woman who gave her last 2 coins, for Jesus said of her, "This poor widow hath cast in more than they all. For all these have of their abundance cast in unto the offerings of God. But she of her penury hath cast in all the living that she had." Luke 21:3-4. The more that we consider the question of degrees of love, the more obvious the answer seems to be. It seems that common reason would tell us that some acts of love are greater than others. Having shown that love can and does display itself in varying degrees, we can move on to the answer of our question. Namely, is it ever right to love some people more than others? To this question, the answer is both yes and no. Let's first examine the sense in which the answer must be yes. Remember, this is the love of God, that we keep His commandments. 1 John 5:3. A life of true love is a life which is conformed to the commandments of God. God has given us many commandments in the Bible, and so our love will express itself in many different forms and degrees. For example, under certain circumstances we might need to rebuke someone in love rather than simply watching them continue in their sinfulness, but under other circumstances we might love someone by bringing them groceries. Different forms of love are commanded for different circumstances. The same is also true for degrees of love. In Paul's letter to the Galatians he writes, "Let us do good unto all men, especially unto them who are of the household of faith." Galatians 6:10. The Greek word translated to especially means most in the greatest degree. Even within the church, there are variances in the degree of love within various forms of love. For example, within the honoring form of love, a greater degree of love is to be shown towards elders who rule well, 1 Timothy 5:17. An especially potent example is found in commandments relating to how we are to love our families. When it comes to the husband expressing love in the form of providing for needs, his family is to be loved in a greater degree than strangers. He cannot neglect the needs of his family to meet the needs of a stranger, for his family is his first priority as a provider. The Bible says, "If any provide not for his own, and specially for those of his own house, he hath denied the faith, and is worse than an infidel." 1 Timothy 5:8. As these examples demonstrate, there is a sense in which we must, under certain circumstances, love someone more than someone else in certain ways. However, as we have said, there is also a sense in which we must never love one person more than another. Though we must put our own families before strangers, and though we must honor elders more than youth, we do not lack love for those to whom a lesser degree of love is given. But even as our own families, we love them in the way and to the degree that God commands. Just as we cannot love our families more than God, we cannot love the stranger more than our family, but we must love all to the utmost within the proper boundaries that God has prescribed. While selfish love loves for the wrong reasons, in the wrong way, and to a wrong degree, divine love, which is manifested as we obey the Lord in faith, draws us closer and closer to perfection of love in every respect. Have you perceived how the Lord is calling upon us even now, telling us to lay down our simple notions of love? Oh, how He desires to purify us from all human love, from all selfish love. Possibly, there are some things we have carried with us, which we no longer have any need of. Let us discard with those old misconceptions about love, and respond to the Lord saying, "I will press on and learn of this divine love."